I'm on.
Okay, welcome everyone to this audit committee meeting tonight. Before I start the meeting, I would like to announce that this meeting is live streamed and it's also recorded. And I take that as a consent from everyone present, those who are online, those who are present in the chamber, that this is your consent for recording. If you do not, then you can leave the meeting. There might be public watching this meeting. So for record, this is my first meeting as a chair, and it would be better if we can introduce each other. I'm Councillor Munir Ahmed, and I'll be chairing the meeting. I think rather than asking each, I can see all the names, so I can introduce myself, or you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, juggling things. It could be useful to for us all to introduce yourself. My name is Mike Pinder. I'm the Assistant Director of Internal Audit and Investigation.
If you can mute your mic, yeah.
Okay, so I'm Emma Horner. I'm the Assistant Director of Technical Finance.
Hello, Louisa Fernley, the Finance Manager for Financial Control.
Sarfraz Khan, Councillor from Southall Broadway.
Ian Kingston, Northfield Councillor.
Augusta Ahapo, Principal Accountant, Financial Control.
Councillor Anthony Young.
I'm Tommy Hunn, independent member.
And we've got online.
Councillor Yvonne Johnson. I wonder if people could speak up. It was much better when we were having the training. It's much lower now.
But you can hear me properly.
I can hear you, but not the others very well.
Okay, we'll make sure. If the others can introduce as well, please.
Bridget Uku, Investment Manager here at London Borough of Ealing.
Thank you. Shukrat Rakimov, Deloitte's Audit Senior Manager for the Council.
Excellent. Thank you for this. Now, are there any apologies? No, I can't.
I haven't received any. I haven't received any.
Okay, so there's no apologies. Urgent matters. I haven't received any. So there's no urgent matters to be considered. Declaration of interest, is there any?
Just thinking, not on declaration of interest, but on membership, you have to note that Councillor Johnson is not present in the room and therefore cannot vote.
Yeah, I've done that. Thank you, Councillor Young.
Then we've got to approve the minutes of the previous meeting that was held on 24th of February 22. Obviously, I was not present, but I can see some of you were present here. So shall we take that as a true record?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. So I'm going to sign those minutes as a true record. Yes, you can take that. Then moving on, we are on item 6 of the agenda, and that is Treasury Management Outturn 21-22. Bridget, over to you now.
Okay, this is the Treasury Management Outturn report for the year 21-22. Just outlining what we have done for Treasury. Risk management still lies at the heart of everything we do. The security of any principal that we invest is the most important thing. We have operated within the confines of the powers that have been given to us. Investment balances were quite high at the end of last year. We did try to take substantial amounts of borrowing to fund Broadway living. And that, in hindsight, has turned out to be a very good decision because interest rates continue to rise with the inflation backdrop. I will actually stop there unless you've got any particular questions. There's nothing I need to point out apart from the borrowing that we've taken out. And investment balances are quite robust at the moment. So we're not looking to borrow in spite of projections for interest rates rising because we've got plenty of cash to fund the capital program going forward until such time as we think or our advisors are telling us that interest rates might start to come back down again by 2024-25. Unless you've got any questions, I'm happy to stop there.
Yes, Councillor Young has got a question. Yes, Councillor.
I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, could you describe the difference between Libid and Sonia?
It's just the bank rates, and what's happened is Libid has been changed and it's been moved to Sonia. I can't actually tell you very what the difference is. It's just that Libid has stopped and now it's Sonia, which is the rate that is being used. But we do have something in the in the back, which explains what they are.
I noticed though that the rates of the 7-day Libid rate is somewhat lower than the SONIA overnight rate, and that we underperformed against SONIA and overperformed against Libid. So I wondered if they were measuring something slightly different.
I can get back to you on exactly how they're measuring those, but we were outperforming Libid largely because it was 7-day, and we are investing for substantially longer than 7 days, our average investments.
Yes, Councillor.
On those grounds, we ought to be doing even better against SONIA, but we're doing worse against SONIA.
Well, our aim really is to manage the security of investments that we're making, but I can go and have a look closely and come back to you about SONIA and how that's measured.
I have another question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Debt Management Office. It's the first time I've seen that described. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Oh, basically, that's the government lending. We're lending to the government. It's the government, basically, the Debt Management Office. And we've been lending to them for quite a long time. It's just that at the moment now, quite a substantial amount has been placed with the Debt Management Office. It is a risk-averse strategy, but that's currently being reviewed.
Sorry, what's being reviewed? The strategy?
The lending strategy, so that we might have more counterparties to lend to.
Okay. Because I presume the Debt Management Office pays a relatively low interest rate.
That's right. That's right.
Our interest to what proportion of our monies are with the Debt Management Office?
At the moment, quite a high proportion. So if you turn to the graph, there is a graph that actually shows that. Let's go down. Page.
Page 8.
Page 8, yeah. Is it page 8?
Yes, page 8.
Okay.
Or 18.
Okay. Page 18 actually shows what we're lending to who. Is it page 18?
Yes.
Have a look.
Is it page 8?
It is. Bridget could report back if they've decided to go somewhere else for a higher return at the next meeting, maybe?
You'd need approval of the committee, I think, wouldn't you, first, to change the strategy?
Oh, no. The strategy is broad enough to enable the Director of Finance to invest how much they want with the counterparties that have already been approved. So it was a local decision just to pause investments with some other counterparties, particularly local authorities, around the time of the pandemic, where some were getting into some difficulties.
We are not approving this. This is only for information.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other question? No, I think Councillor Young has asked enough questions. So the next item is Treasury Management Q1 update, and that's again you, Bridget.
Yes, again, this is just an update for what's happened in Q1. Investment balances have more or less continued to rise ever so slightly, in spite of no additional borrowing. Nothing unusual has happened in the quarter to report. So unless you've got questions again, I have nothing further to say.
Any questions? No, there's no questions, Bridget, on this one. So we will thank you for the updates. We are moving to the next item now, and I'll ask the external auditors to give it an update.
Thank you very much. As an update to our external audits, our 2020-2021 audits of the Council and Pension Fund are substantially complete. We are clearing our final review comments and making updates to our value for money work. There is a matter we are currently waiting for further guidance from SIPFA, which relates to proposed changes in the accounting treatment of infrastructure assets. We were anticipating that this would be released a few weeks ago, but it has not been yet received. We await further information from SIPFA on this matter before we can conclude the audit. This matter is impacting completion of the majority of local authorities' audits that are open for 2020-21. Once this is resolved and subject to our clearance of our final review comments, we currently anticipate the issuing of our final reports to your next meeting in September. Our just going to the 2020.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Carry on, please. Carry on.
Very shortly, and given an update on 2021-22 audits has started, and we have completed some of our planning procedures and anticipate issuing our planning audit planning report to your next meeting as well. Once our 2020-2021 audits and planning for 2022 are complete, we will confirm the timing of completion of 2022 audit. Thank you very much for your attention, and happy to take any questions at this moment.
Any questions? Yes, Tommy?
Yeah, thank you for the update. Am I right? Just to clarify what you said there. So the audit started, but the planning document will come at the next audit when we get your final report as well.
Yes, just maybe just with a step back, I think we will be reporting in respect of the 2 financial years audits with a final audit paper for 21 audit and the planning paper for 22 audit at the same time for the next meeting.
But you've started some of the planning work already. You've started some of the work on the 22.
That's correct.
Well, because we've got the draft in our pack today, so you've started some work.
This is absolutely right.
Should we not expect the planning, your plan before you start the work? Is there a reason we couldn't get the plan today?
Absolutely. If in terms of the planning, so I suppose with the final paper of 2021, which is probably has been the biggest focus for us to complete. The reason why we start the procedures ahead of the time with the 2022 to not to lose the resources we've allocated, but I guess with the timing to complete those, it was pretty much the timing which would be required for us to complete, which forced us to put it on the next meeting's agenda.
Yeah, I appreciate there's a resourcing thing at your end, but I think it would be helpful to have a written update as well, especially if work has started before we've seen the plan at the committee. So I think in future, if we could have a written update, particularly around the plan, I appreciate some of it might be subject to the previous year being completed, but I think we should still have sight of something because you clearly got assumptions you're working on that we should have sight of if you're engaged in the work already.
I think in the past we've had it circulated when it was available. Could that be done this year?
Yeah.
Definitely. Let me take this away with our team, and we'll make this one as we'll take it away.
You'd be happy to circulate it to us as soon as it's available.
Just to clarify, with ahead of the next meeting, is that correct? You would like to see it?
Can you switch on the mic?
Sorry, if it's available before the next meeting, I think we ought to see it before the next meeting.
Yep. Well,
so the members are asking if you can circulate before the meeting. That would be helpful.
Absolutely. That would be our plan.
Thank you. Any other question from anyone? No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your update, and look forward to receiving your written report next time. Moving on, we are getting to item 9 on the agenda, draft statement of accounts, and Louisa will be reporting this.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the draft 21-22 accounts. So these are the unaudited draft, and we published them on the 1st of July. So we were 4 weeks ahead of the statutory deadline, which is the end of July. This is for note and comment. So the statutory rules and regulations don't require audit committee to approve it at this point, but it will come back to you again on completion of audit for committee sign off before it's published, and that's part of the audit and accounting regulations. So yeah, nothing else to comment on, but happy to take any questions that the committee has.
Any question? Yes, Councillor Young.
Yes, I've got a question on page 130 of our pack. And that is, I see that the compensation for loss of office to the previous chief executive was £95,000. In future years, if it happened that a compensation for loss of office was repaid in whole or in part, where would that appear in the accounts?
That's a question we'll take away and check against our CIPFA code of practice in terms of how we would account for that.
Could you let me know how that would happen?
Yeah.
And secondly, does that compensation for loss of office appear in, I don't know, his note on the following page, termination benefits? Will it be included in that as well?
Yes, it's also included in that note, in the exit packages note.
We don't know which one it is.
It's included within the bandings of that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further question? Yes, Tommy.
I wondered if I could just ask a more general question. Are there any particular changes to the code that's made this year more challenging, or anything different that might make the audit process more tricky?
There weren't any significant changes in terms of accounting standards that were made this year. I think some of the infrastructure assets issues which are ongoing with the guidance from CIPFA coming out will possibly impact the 21-22 accounts as well. But there's no significant changes to the code this year.
If I may, it might be a question for our external auditors as well, but have there been, we've in previous years had issues with our preparation of the accounts. Have there been any such issues this time? Should we expect the audit and everything to go relatively smoothly this year?
Yes, I think we've, as we said, we've published ahead of the statutory deadline, and quite significantly ahead of the statutory deadline. So I think that's really positive and shows that we've got, you know, a good technical team in, and it's adequately resourced. So I think we're expecting that Ealing can provide the necessary resources to do that in future, and to provide the right resources for the external audit too.
Can I just extend that to the external auditor and ask whether they've received the sort of working papers they would expect to at the start?
Yes, Shukat is here, and definitely, I think looking at the standards and the changes which have been there hasn't been any fundamentally big changes which would result the significant difficulties in the upcoming years. And I think at the moment we have received the draft of the statements as the planning procedures have commenced on our end. I think that's our expectation. And to answer the question, yes, I think our goal is to see more smoother process, and we don't anticipate anything fundamentally in terms of the standards which will cause the delays.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Okay. We are moving on to the next item, but before that, we missed Keith Broomfield when we were doing introductions. Keith is taking the notes of the meeting. Sorry for missing you, Keith.
No problem.
Okay, the next item is item 10 on the agenda, and that is, Mike, your item, the opinion of the head on 21-22 and Q4 investigation report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go slightly out of order because I know we've got a few new members. I'm going to start with the internal audit performance, which is on page 238 of the pack. So I'll come back to the head of audit's opinion, but this work kind of informs that. So I'm going slightly out of sync. I'm pleased to report all the reports were finalised during the year. We've previously reported on a number of those to the committee during Q1 to Q3, and those committee members who were here will hopefully remember those. Otherwise, I bored you to death. This section brings in the Q4 and the reports that have been finalised. I'd like to draw your attention to the reports on page 243, which are the ones that have received limited or no assurance, and essentially the biggest concerns. So just highlighting those to members, which you may well have seen. You'll note significantly the fire safety report, which has 3 assurances breaking down the different levels of different levels for each of the service, and you'll see that place and housing received no assurance. And members will be aware, I think, that this has been to cabinet, and that we've done a referral to the a self-referral to the housing regulator as a result of some of this work, and the council is taking it very seriously and has a excuse me, a strategic committee that's monitoring the performance of the work. There was initially an aim to address those recommendations by September. As you'll see from the follow-up, some of that has been working through, and we'll continue to report back on that, but I just wanted to highlight members' attention to that. Sorry, I can see a question.
I just want to ask the chair that, well, wouldn't it be right that members of the audit committee are informed when we get a serious discrepancy like this, where no assurance is received on the audit report? Because we've only heard about this late in the day once action's been taken.
So we would normally bring this to the next committee, which this is. It's a fair point, I think, because of the things got out of sequence, I think possibly because we were awaiting the committee members. So I have briefed Councillor Ahmed on some of these issues, but it's a fair point. We could ensure that these come to you more promptly in the future.
I'm trying to think when our last meeting was. It must be in the minutes. But by May, it was February, end of February. By May, it was acted upon. I'd have thought it would have been ready for our last meeting.
So the previous reports weren't finalised until after, sorry, these reports weren't finalised until after the last committee. Otherwise, we'd have brought them to the previous committee.
Notwithstanding that, I would have expected as a member of the audit committee to have been informed of something this serious at an earlier stage than now.
Okay, I mean, this is the normal reporting cycle, so I apologise, but if we can take that away, and for the future we can ensure that if there are any no assurance reports that you are notified.
Not just no assurance, but if there's a high risk such as on the commercial property, I think we ought to be informed.
Chair, can we do that in future, perhaps?
Yes, Councillor Johnson, let Councillor Young ask the question. This is a serious matter, and I have had a discussion, and I agree we should have received the reports, but I wasn't on the committee, and as Mike said, they were not ready. So it is good to understand really how things happen. So I'm happy to take question if you have further questions, Councillor Young.
I agree with Councillor Johnson. I think in future we ought to be informed at an early stage.
Okay, thank you. Any further question on that?
Oh, thanks for that, Mike. I wonder if you could just elaborate on the Chief Exec's HR recruitment limited assurance report as well, please.
Sure. So, sorry, I'm juggling screens. So essentially, this is kind of outside of the normal. So most of our temporary recruitment goes through and the DECO contract. Some of it goes outside of that. So we did an audit to kind of identify the extent of it. As you'll see from that, there's 4 high-risk recommendations around the lack of compliance with requirements for approval, and the due diligence can't even say the word, due diligence requirements not being followed, and the tenure, so not reviewing them regularly enough. So obviously some significant findings on that. Management have received that report and are looking to implement everything by December, with some measures going in prior to that, and we'll report back on that.
Just to be clear, we're actually implementing some controls so this can't happen again, or is it a lesson learned, say I won't do that again next time?
So we are implementing controls to do it. I mean, it's one of those kind of interesting areas where the policy, some of the policies were there, some of the policies need to be tightened up, but obviously management needs to comply with those policies. So HR are looking to how they can ensure that management are aware of those and comply with that. So there's additional checks going to be in place on top of that as well from the HR perspective, but it does need management to tighten up those controls. And some of those areas where we identified the most kind of significant non-compliance have put measures in to try and ensure that they do address those as well.
Yeah, thank you. If you can switch off your mic for a second. Any other questions? No? Thank you. The next item is draft annual governance statement 21-22. Will you cover that, Mike? Yes, please.
Yep. So apologies. The covering report for this was omitted, entirely my fault. So we're asking you to note this report, similar to the accounts. And hopefully it's provided for information as a draft ahead of the audit. Hopefully the paper largely speaks for itself, but by way of introduction, it's essentially there's a working group formed of key governance people, so directors of legal, the chief finance officer, director of strategy, and director of HR, and myself all work together to update the areas of assurance that are contained within there. We also ask all directors and executive directors to complete a positive assurance statement which cites any areas that they feel should be included as issues within the report. We then look at that against the risk register and compile what we believe to be the key issues for the council to manage. Obviously, members will be aware of the risk register, and those issues I don't think will come as any particular surprise to them based upon the kind of issues that we have on the risk register. So it's citing out what the actions are to address. Ultimately, this report will come back to you once it's been subject to the audit, and then it goes to the leader and chief executive to sign. Section 6 sets out the key issues for this year. Any questions?
Any questions on that?
No.
Yes, Tommy.
Sorry, I might have missed the opportunity to ask about the head of audit's opinion, but I guess it feeds into the AGS, so I'll ask it now if you don't mind. But I'm conscious it says limited assurance this year, and it was limited assurance last year, and I think it was limited assurance the year before. And going back to your "don't shoot the messenger" point, I appreciate it's not you that we're talking about here, but I wonder what management's response was to your head of audit opinion and how it's featuring in the AGS, because we need some action from what you're seeing, and I don't think I'm seeing enough of a direction of travel stuff. It just seems to be we're limited constantly.
So 2 years ago was reasonable. Last year was limited. And I think so. Last year was very much kind of a balance. There was basically quantitatively, I think it was the number of reports that were limited, forced it into that kind of box. And obviously things like the pandemic and people working, etc., from home and all those kind of factors made me feel it was limited. I think we kind of discussed that at the time it was very much on the cusp. This year, actually, the number of reports is reduced. But it's the severity, it's the health and safety reports that have led to that. What I would say is that we've had a very, very positive response in terms of the actions on the sorry, excuse me, on the health and safety reports. I've been monitoring papers from the board to try and ensure that those actions are taken very, very seriously. You will see in terms of the follow-ups, some of the targets haven't been met, but they are setting out new clear dates in terms of the implementation for all of those recommendations. And I'm trying to make sure that they monitor those and ensure that those are delivered. I suspect we won't necessarily hit the audit deadlines, but I'm keen that they set new deadlines and that those deadlines are achieved and reported back, and management are clear on those deadlines. And I've said this quite often to management recently: you shouldn't be waiting for us to come and tell you it hasn't been done. You need to be kind of monitoring these things, seeing where things aren't done, asking the questions when they will be done. And those kind of things, and not waiting for us to come and do that. And that message has been very strongly received. And I'm hoping to get hold of kind of the action plan and new dates, and hoping that management are going to track that through that board so that they know and have those clear deadlines, and we can give you clear implementation dates on top of the audit implementation dates where they're not able to achieve those, and that it's been tracked. But I would say it's been taken very, very seriously by management, and they're very keen to address that. And obviously the self-referral to the self-referral to the housing regulator, they set out an action plan on that, and it's been taken very, very seriously by management and members to try and ensure that that's addressed going forward. So I feel it's a very serious message this year, and it's been taken very seriously by management, and they're looking to have things like the follow-up actions going to SLT on a regular basis, so they can make sure that things are being addressed moving forward too. So it's a very poignant question, and I do feel we are getting the traction that it deserves as a result.
Thank you for that. I think it's helpful about the areas that you've found weaknesses in, and it's good to hear management are taking those seriously. I think it'd be helpful to see something that gives us a forward plan, so that next year you're going to have an opinion next year as well, and you'll be auditing new areas, and hopefully we're not coming across the same sorts of issues, but because there's something sort of underlying, I think, across the piece. Because I know you make the point that actually part of it's quite a mature risk identification. You've gone and looked for the higher risk areas, and lo and behold, you found weaknesses in the high risk areas. That can't be a reason why we're always getting a limited assurance for the as an overall, because the answer to that is, let's hide away or don't look in the high risk areas. But there's still something about looking in the high risk areas and then being able to demonstrate, management being able to demonstrate that they are on top of the high risk area. So I think there's a missing piece to try and break this cycle of constantly waiting for audit to find the problems. So I'd sort of encourage that kind of an action plan as well. And for me, that's what the AGS and your head of audit opinion should really be doing, not only trying to get action on the stuff you found, but take this as learning for other areas, because we are going to come round at some point. That message doesn't seem to get through to management from what I'm seeing of the constant patterns. So that's the bit I'd really, and I'm saying it to you, but it's a really message for management really. But if that could be relayed, I think that's an important message.
I will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on this? No? Okay. Item 12 contains information that is exempt from disclosure by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. And for clarity, I'm going to read this. Exclusion of press and public on the agreement of the Audit Committee under Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972. The public would be excluded from the meeting for the item of business relating to the confidential appendix to item 12 on the grounds that it would involve the disclosure of exempt information under the relevant paragraph of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act for the reasons stated on the agenda. Risk management performance update, July 2021. That's the item that I'm talking about. Sorry? Yeah. Is there anything that we need to talk about or just?
If you're happy, you've read the papers and are aware of any changes, then nothing from me.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Excellent. Well, then if that is the case, then we have come to the last item on the agenda, and that is the date of next meeting. And that would be on Thursday, 29th of September, 2022. I can see smiles on the faces. Okay, well, yes, Ian?
Yeah, could I just ask a quick, totally practical question about the dates of the meeting? I've noticed they're all at the end of the month, and I just want to know, is that convenient for the finance staff? Because it seemed to be around the 29th, 27th. I know I work in finance, it's our busiest period. So I was just thinking from your guys, from your point of view, if it is a suitable time or not.
So the accounts are generally published by the end of July. So it's I'm just thinking on a month to month. Do you work on a month to month basis just from that point of view? I don't know. It tends to be around the kind of publication and the deadlines, and having them as near to the deadlines as we possibly can, which is why it's the month end. So yeah, sorry, it's probably not great for you, but
that's fine.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, thank you for attending this meeting, and I also want to record a thanks to those who were at the previous meeting, and either they are here or they have left either the council or the committee. I want to record thanks on behalf of the committee, and thanks for attending this meeting.